It all started with a broken refrigerator. I thought it would be a simple fix, just another day in my quiet suburban life. But when Marcus walked through that door, everything changed. He wasn't just here to repair my fridge, he was here to repair something in me that I didn't even know was broken. Now, as I sit here staring at my husband's face, I realize the cost of that repair might be my marriage. And if he finds out the truth, it could destroy everything I've ever loved, including him. But the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, there's no turning back. This is the story of how one broken appliance shattered my life, and how I tried to piece it back together. Angela Carter lived in a cozy suburban home in Atlanta, the kind of place where neighbors waved as they drove by, and kids played basketball in driveways after school. Her husband, Tom, worked long hours at construction sites across the city, building houses for other families while his own began to crumble unnoticed. They'd been married for 6 years, a decent stretch, but not without its challenges. From the outside, Angela and Tom looked like any ordinary couple. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dependable, the kind of man who fixed leaky faucets and mowed the lawn every Saturday morning. She was warm, vibrant, and full-hearted, always making sure dinner was ready when he got home. Together, they had built a life filled with stability, if not passion. But there was one problem neither of them talked about openly: intimacy, or rather, the lack of it. Tom suffered from erectile dysfunction, a condition he shrugged off as if it were just another inconvenience, like a flat tire or a power outage. To him, it wasn't worth worrying over. "It happens," he'd say whenever Angela tried to broach the subject, and then he'd change the topic, leaving her feeling frustrated and helpless. For Angela, though, it wasn't something she could ignore. Sex wasn't just physical for her, it was emotional, a way to feel connected to her partner. Without it, she felt lonely, unfulfilled, and increasingly distant from Tom. Over the years, she'd tried everything she could think of to reignite the spark. She bought books, scoured online forums, and even ordered herbal remedies shipped all the way from Nigeria, hoping some ancient wisdom might hold the answer. Nothing worked. Desperate, she turned to toys, thinking maybe this could bridge the gap between them. But even that didn't help, not because the tools weren't effective, but because Tom refused to engage. When she suggested couples therapy or visiting a doctor together, he dismissed the idea entirely. "We're fine," he'd insist, brushing her concerns aside. The indifference stung worse than rejection ever could. By the time the refrigerator broke down, Angela was at her breaking point. It wasn't just the lack of intimacy, it was the crushing loneliness that came with it. Every night lying beside Tom, she felt like a stranger in her own bed. She had begged him to try therapy, to see a doctor, to do something, but he just shrugged it off, leaving her feeling invisible. When the fridge stopped working, it felt like the final straw, a symbol of everything crumbling around her. Every night, lying beside him in bed, she wondered if this was really all her marriage would amount to. Two people sharing space but little else. Little did she know, the arrival of a stranger would soon push her closer to the edge than she'd ever imagined. The morning the refrigerator broke down started like any other. Angela woke up to the sound of Tom's alarm blaring at 5:30 a.m., his usual wake-up time for work. She rolled over and watched him shuffle out of bed, pulling on his worn-out jeans and grabbing his lunchbox from the counter. Before heading out the door, he kissed her forehead absent-mindedly. Just a quick peck, nothing more, and muttered, "I'll be home late tonight. Big project downtown." Angela sighed as she heard the garage door close behind him. Another day alone in the house stretched ahead of her, and now, thanks to the busted fridge, she'd have to deal with spoiled milk and warm soda until someone came to fix it. By mid-morning, she called the repair service, hoping they could send someone soon. The woman on the phone promised a technician would arrive by noon. At exactly 11:45, the doorbell rang. Angela opened it to find a man standing there holding a toolbox. He introduced himself as Marcus, the refrigerator repairman. He was younger than she expected, maybe late 20s, with smooth brown skin, kind eyes, and an easy smile that made her feel instantly comfortable. His uniform was crisp, and he carried himself with confidence, exuding the kind of charm that came naturally to people who knew how to put others at ease. "Hi, Mrs. Carter," Marcus said politely, stepping inside after she invited him in. "Mind showing me where the fridge is?" Angela led Marcus to the kitchen, the faint hum of the broken refrigerator filling the silence. The air was warm and the smell of spoiled milk lingered in the room. She gestured to the appliance, her voice tinged with frustration. "It just stopped cooling yesterday. I don't know what happened. Everything was fine until now." Marcus nodded, his kind eyes meeting hers for a moment before he crouched down. The sound of his toolbox clicking open echoed in the quiet room, and the metallic scent of tools mixed with the faint aroma of his cologne. As he began inspecting the fridge, his hands moved with precision, each movement deliberate and confident. As he worked, Angela lingered nearby, watching him tinker with wires and parts she didn't understand. There was something oddly fascinating about the way his hands moved, steady, precise, deliberate. It reminded her of how Tom used to be when they first met, back when he still seemed interested in impressing her. "So, how long have you lived here?" Marcus asked casually, breaking the silence. "Oh, about 6 years," Angela replied. "We bought the house not long after we got married." "That's nice," Marcus said, glancing up briefly. "You must really like it if you've stayed this long." Angela hesitated before answering. "Yeah, it's comfortable. Quiet neighborhood, good schools. It's nice." Marcus smiled again, sensing the hesitation in her voice, but choosing not to press further. Instead, he focused on the task at hand, occasionally asking questions about when the problem had started or whether anything unusual had occurred recently. Angela answered dutifully, though her mind kept drifting elsewhere, to thoughts of Tom, their strained relationship, and the emptiness that seemed to grow wider between them with each passing day. After about 20 minutes of tinkering, Marcus stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. "Looks like I'll need to order a part," he explained. "Shouldn't take too long, but I won't be able to finish today. Is it okay if I come back tomorrow?" Angela nodded. "Sure, that works." As Marcus packed up his tools, he turned to her with a friendly grin. "Thanks for your patience, Mrs. Carter. Oh, and hey, if you're ever looking for recommendations on appliances, let me know. I've seen my fair share of these things, so I can probably help you avoid some headaches next time." His tone was light, almost playful, and Angela found herself smiling back despite herself. "Will do," she said. "Thanks, Marcus." When Marcus returned the next day, things felt different somehow. Maybe it was the way he greeted her with a warm, "Hey, Angela," instead of the formal "Mrs. Carter." Or maybe it was the fact that she'd spent most of the previous evening thinking about their brief conversation, replaying it in her head like a song stuck on repeat. Whatever it was, Angela couldn't deny the small spark of excitement she felt when she saw him walk through the door again. This time, Marcus finished the repair quickly, replacing the faulty part and testing the fridge to make sure it was working properly. As he cleaned up, he struck up another casual chat, asking about her hobbies, her job, and what she liked to do in her free time. Angela found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected, sharing bits of her life that she rarely talked about with anyone, not even Tom. "You seem like someone who likes to stay busy," Marcus observed as she described her volunteer work at the local community center. "That's cool. Not everyone has the energy for that kind of thing." "Well, it keeps me going," Angela admitted. "Sometimes I think I'd go crazy if I didn't have something to focus on." Marcus nodded knowingly. "I get that. Life can feel pretty empty without purpose, huh?" His words hit closer to home than Angela cared to admit. For a moment, she considered telling him everything, the struggles with Tom, the loneliness, the frustration, but she stopped herself. What would he think of her? Would he judge her? Pity her? She wasn't ready to risk finding out. Still, there was something undeniably comforting about talking to Marcus. Unlike Tom, who often seemed distant and disinterested, Marcus listened intently, his gaze steady and unwavering. It made Angela feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. By the time Marcus left that afternoon, Angela realized she didn't want their interaction to end. On impulse, she blurted out, "Hey, do you want to grab coffee sometime? Just to say thanks for fixing the fridge." Marcus paused, clearly surprised by the invitation. Then he grinned. "Coffee sounds great. How about tomorrow?" Their coffee date turned into lunch, which turned into dinner. Over the course of several weeks, Angela and Marcus grew closer, bonding over shared stories and mutual interests. At first, Angela told herself it was harmless, a friendship born out of convenience and circumstance. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Every time Marcus smiled at her, every time he touched her arm lightly during a laugh, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: desire. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt conversation about their respective struggles, Marcus leaned in and kissed her. Angela froze, her mind racing. This was wrong, so wrong. But for the first time in years, she felt alive. The guilt gnawed at her, but the desire was stronger. Almost instinctively, she kissed him back. It was soft, tentative, yet charged with electricity. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus whispered, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that." But Angela shook her head, her voice trembling. "Don't apologize. I wanted it too." Yet even as she said the words, a voice in the back of her mind whispered, "What if Tom finds out? What if this destroys everything?" But for now, she pushed those thoughts aside, choosing to live in the moment. Yet deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of a dangerous game, one she might not be able to win. But Angela shook her head. "Don't apologize," she murmured. "I wanted it too." From that moment on, their relationship changed. What had started as innocent conversations evolved into secret meetings outside the house, quick rendezvous in hotel rooms, stolen moments in Marcus's truck, and late-night texts exchanged under the guise of sleep. For Angela, it was exhilarating, intoxicating even. With Marcus, she felt alive in a way she hadn't felt with Tom in years, yet guilt gnawed at her constantly. She hated lying to Tom, hated sneaking around behind his back. But every time she tried to stop, every time she resolved to end things with Marcus, the thought of returning to her old life felt unbearable. How could she go back to a marriage devoid of passion, a husband indifferent to her needs? Meanwhile, Tom remained oblivious, wrapped up in his own world of work and routine. If he noticed Angela's frequent absences or distracted demeanor, he didn't mention it. To him, everything was fine. As long as bills were paid and meals were cooked, nothing else mattered. But Angela knew better. Beneath the surface, cracks were forming, threatening to shatter the fragile facade of their marriage. And sooner or later, the truth would come out. For weeks, Angela lived a double life. By day, she was the dutiful wife, cooking meals, cleaning the house, and pretending everything was fine. But by night, she became someone else entirely, someone who craved excitement, passion, connection. And Marcus gave her all of that. But how long could she keep this secret before it all came crashing down? Marcus became her escape, her secret world where none of her problems existed. But as much as she tried to convince herself that what she was doing wasn't wrong, the guilt weighed heavily on her chest. It all came to a head one Friday evening. Tom had called earlier in the week to say he'd be working late again, a common occurrence these days, and Angela seized the opportunity to meet Marcus at a small hotel just outside the city. They'd grown bolder with their meetings, no longer hiding behind excuses or worrying about being seen together. For those few hours, they were free. That night, however, something felt different. As they lay tangled in each other's arms afterward, Marcus broke the silence with a question that sent a chill down Angela's spine. "What are we doing, Angela?" His voice was soft but serious, his eyes searching hers for answers she didn't have. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "What do you mean?" "I mean, This. He gestured between them. We can't keep going like this forever. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with us. Angela swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She knew he was right, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel real in a way she couldn't ignore. I don't know, she admitted finally. I needed something, Marcus. Something Tom couldn't give me. Marcus nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. And I get that. I really do. But what happens next? Are you planning to leave him? Stay with him? Keep seeing me on the side? The questions hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Angela opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. The truth was, she didn't know what she wanted. Part of her loved Tom, the man who had stood by her through thick and thin, who had built a life with her. But another part resented him for ignoring her needs, for letting their marriage slip into monotony without fighting to save it. And then there was Marcus, who made her feel alive again, but also reminded her of everything she was risking. I don't know, she repeated softly, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know. Marcus reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. You need to figure it out, Angela, because if you don't, this is going to eat you alive. The next morning, Angela returned home, feeling like a stranger in her own life. She walked through the front door, expecting to find the house empty since Tom was still at work. Instead, she froze when she saw him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at his phone with a grim expression on his face. Hey, she said cautiously, setting her purse down. What are you doing home so early? Tom looked up, his blue eyes cold and piercing. We need to talk. Her stomach dropped. About what? He held up his phone, turning the screen toward her. It took a moment for Angela to process what she was seeing. A series of text messages exchanged between her and Marcus. Messages she thought she'd deleted. Messages detailing plans to meet, intimate confessions, promises of secrecy. How did you... She began, her voice trembling. One of your texts must have accidentally sent to my number instead of his, Tom explained, his tone eerily calm. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I checked your phone while you were out last night. Angela's knees buckled, and she sank into a chair, unable to believe what was happening. Tom, Don't, he interrupted sharply. Just don't. How long has this been going on? She wanted to lie, to deny it, to make up some excuse that would erase the betrayal etched across his face. But the words wouldn't come. All she could manage was a whisper. A few months. Tom let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Months? Months, Angela. How could you do this to me, to us? His voice cracked, and for the first time Angela saw the raw pain in his eyes, pain she had caused. She wanted to reach out, to explain, but the words caught in her throat. I thought we were building a life together, he continued, his voice trembling. But all this time, you were tearing it down. He slammed his fist on the table, making Angela flinch. Do you even care about me anymore, or was I just someone to keep the bills paid while you went off with him? Angela felt the weight of his words like a punch to the gut. She had been so focused on her own loneliness that she hadn't considered how much this would destroy him. Tom stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't even look at you right now, he said, his voice shaking with anger. I need to get out of here before I say something I'll regret. He grabbed his keys and stormed out of the house, leaving Angela alone with her shattered reality. I'm sorry, she choked out, tears streaming down her face. I never meant for it to happen. It started with talking and then... And then what? He demanded, his voice rising. You decided screwing around behind my back was okay? That cheating on your husband was somehow justified? It's not about that, Angela shot back, anger flaring despite her guilt. You act like everything's fine, but it's not. You don't care about me, Tom. You haven't cared about me in years. That's not true, he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. I've given you everything. This house, stability, love. What more do you want from me? I wanted you to try, Angela yelled, standing up now, her emotions spilling over. I begged you to fix things, to go to therapy, to see a doctor. But you refused. You acted like it didn't matter, like our problems weren't worth solving. So yeah, maybe I found comfort somewhere else. But don't act like this is all on me. The room fell silent after her outburst, the air thick with tension. Tom stared at her, his face pale and stricken, as if he were seeing her for the first time. His hands clenched into fists, and for a moment Angela thought he might lash out. But instead, he took a step back, his voice barely above a whisper. I gave you everything, Angela. Everything. And this is how you repay me? The pain in his voice was unbearable, and Angela felt the walls closing in around her. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. If that's how you feel, then maybe we shouldn't be together anymore. What do you think Angela should do now? Should she fight to save her marriage with Tom, or is it time to walk away? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading everyone. Angela felt like the floor had been ripped out from under her. What are you saying? I'm saying I can't stay married to someone who doesn't trust me enough to fight for us. If you're willing to throw away 6 years because of this... He gestured vaguely at the phone. Then maybe we were never meant to last. With that, he grabbed his keys and stormed out of the house, leaving Angela alone with her shattered reality. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, as the enormity of what she'd done crashed down on her. She had ruined everything, the marriage, the life she'd worked so hard to build, and for what? A fleeting sense of happiness that now felt hollow and meaningless. Hours passed before Angela managed to pull herself together. Her mind raced with possibilities, regrets, and fears. What would happen now? Would Tom file for divorce? Would he tell their friends, their families? How could she possibly face anyone knowing what she'd done? As she sat in the darkened living room, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Marcus. Are you okay? Angela stared at the screen, torn between relief and resentment. On one hand, Marcus had been the only person who truly understood her pain, who made her feel desired and valued. On the other hand, he was the reason her marriage was falling apart. She didn't reply, unsure of what to say. Instead, she scrolled through old photos on her phone, memories of happier times with Tom flashing before her eyes. There was their wedding day, both of them laughing as they danced under twinkling lights. There was their first vacation together, hiking trails in Colorado and marveling at the mountains. And there was the day they bought the house, standing proudly in the empty living room as they dreamed of the future. Tears blurred her vision as she realized how far they'd drifted from those moments. Somewhere along the way, they'd stopped trying, stopped communicating, stopped caring. And now, it might be too late to fix it. But even as despair threatened to consume her, a small spark of determination ignited within her. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe she owed it to herself and to Tom to try one last time. After all, they had built something beautiful once. Could they do it again? The next morning, Angela woke up with a heavy heart, but also a strange sense of clarity. She knew she couldn't undo what had happened. She couldn't erase the betrayal or the pain she'd caused Tom, but she could at least try to make things right. For better or worse, their marriage was worth fighting for, and if there was even the slightest chance they could rebuild it, she owed it to both of them to take that step. After showering and dressing, Angela decided to call Tom. Her hands trembled as she dialed his number, unsure of whether he'd answer. To her relief, he picked up after a few rings, though his voice was distant and guarded. "Tom," she began hesitantly, "can we talk? Please?" There was a long pause on the other end before he finally responded. "What do you want to say, Angela?" "I want to apologize," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust, and I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am, but I also want you to know that I still love you. I still believe in us." Another silence followed, this one heavier than the last. When Tom finally spoke, his tone was measured but tinged with sadness. "Do you really think we can fix this, Angela? After everything?" "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "But I'm willing to try if you are. We've been through so much together, Tom. 6 years isn't something we should throw away without giving it another shot." Tom sighed deeply, and Angela could almost picture him running a hand through his hair, a habit he had when he was stressed or conflicted. "Look, I need time to think about this," he said eventually. "What you did, it's not something I can just forget overnight, but I'll admit, I haven't exactly been the best husband either. Maybe we both messed up somewhere along the way." Angela nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "That's fair, and I'll own my mistakes, Tom. All of them. But I hope you'll consider meeting me halfway. We can go to counseling, see a doctor together, whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Tom exhaled sharply, as if releasing some of the tension he'd been carrying. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's meet tomorrow. We'll figure out where to go from there." Relief washed over Angela, though she knew this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. Still, it was a start, a glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark situation. Later that day, Angela received another message from Marcus. This time, she didn't hesitate to respond. "Are you okay?" His text read again. She stared at the screen for a while, weighing her words carefully before typing back. "I'm going to work things out with Tom," she wrote. "I can't keep doing this to him, or to myself." Marcus replied almost immediately. "I understand. You deserve happiness, Angela, whatever that looks like for you." Though his response was kind, Angela felt a pang of guilt mixed with gratitude. Marcus had been a lifeline during a time when she felt utterly lost, but now it was clear that their relationship had served its purpose. It had forced her to confront the issues in her marriage and decide what truly mattered to her. As painful as it was to let him go, she knew it was the right thing to do. The following afternoon, Angela met Tom at a quiet cafe near their neighborhood. They sat across from each other, the awkwardness between them palpable, yet tempered by a shared determination to move forward. Over coffee, they talked openly for the first time in months about their frustrations, their fears, and their hopes for the future. "I never realized how lonely you felt," Tom admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought avoiding the problem would somehow make it go away, but all I did was push you further away." "And I let my frustration turn into resentment," Angela confessed. "Instead of working with you to find solutions, I gave up. That's not fair to either of us." They agreed to seek professional help, starting with couples therapy and exploring medical options for Tom's condition. It wouldn't be easy. There were no guarantees their efforts would succeed, but they were willing to put in the work. As they left the cafe hand in hand, Angela felt a flicker of optimism she hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about their future. Weeks later, Angela stood in the kitchen, watching Tom fix a loose cabinet hinge. He glanced up at her and smiled, a genuine smile, the kind she hadn't seen in ages. It made her heart swell with gratitude and renewed commitment to their relationship. But as she turned away, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from an unknown number. "Just checking in. Hope you're doing well." Her stomach tightened as she recognized the sender. It was Marcus. Despite their agreement to part ways, he had reached out one last time. Angela hesitated, staring at the screen for a long moment. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but then another message came through. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her heart raced. What if Tom saw this? What if Marcus wouldn't let go? She quickly deleted the messages, but as she did, a third message popped up. "We need to talk." Angela's hands trembled. The past wasn't going to stay buried, and neither was Marcus. And now she wasn't sure if she could keep him at bay. As she put her phone down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And deep down, she knew that Marcus wasn't going to let her go that easily. Still, as she went about her day, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. Was she truly ready to leave the past behind? Or was there still a part of her holding on to the excitement and passion Marcus represented? Only time would tell. So, what do you think Angela should do next? Should she fight for her marriage with Tom? Or is it time to walk away and start fresh? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading everyone. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Will Angela and Tom rebuild their marriage, or will Marcus's reappearance destroy everything? Hit subscribe now to find out. And while you're at it, let me know. Do you think Angela made the right choice by staying with Tom, or should she have left him for Marcus? Vote in the comments below. And if you were in Angela's shoes, what would you do? Let me know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. By the way, if you've ever felt like Angela, lost, disconnected, or unsure if your marriage can be saved, there's hope. You can save your marriage, starting today. Even if you are the only one interested, there's a simple resource that has helped countless couples reconnect and rediscover the love they thought was gone forever. You can check it out via the resource link in the description below. And if you've ever wondered whether your partner is being faithful, you're not alone. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and when it's shaken, it can feel impossible to move forward. But there's a simple step-by-step method to know if your partner is cheating, without hiring a private investigator or confronting your partner blindly. I know a lot of persons this step-by-step method has helped uncover the truth in less than 7 days. If you're ready to know for sure, find the links to all the resources in the description. Angela's story is a reminder that love is complicated, but it's never too late to fight for what matters most. Whether you're trying to save your marriage or uncover the truth, the first step is always the hardest, but it's also the most important. Take that step today.